This will be the reading for the sign of Pisces for the month of September 2026. And what I've done is I've pulled 4 rows of 3 cards each and an overall energy card. The overall energy card will affect each consecutive card that is pulled in each consecutive week. So be prepared for that. It's a long listen, so put your feet up, grab a coffee, and let's get started. Now, the deck that I'm using is the Rider-Waite deck by Pamela Coleman-Smith and Arthur Waite. So let's get cracking. The first card you have is the energy card, and that is the Three of Swords reversed. And that is, someone's hiding bad news from you. It might even have to do with health issues or surgery of sort. Now, it does talk about needing to manage strength and to take care of your body. Are you, Pisces, dealing with some type of health problems in an early stage of development? Be aware of that. Now, it does say that a person near you is suffering, but you're not aware of how much. Stress will cause inflammation, and inflammation will cause disease, so be aware of that. Now, it does talk about hardships. So it talks about someone that's dealing with hardships in the month of September, and that could be you. And this is something that has happened on a continual basis in the past maybe 5 years, okay? Now, it does talk about the fact that these hardships have accumulated. And perhaps if it's you, Pisces, maybe it's you that's dealing with heartache from the past. And as you're moving into the future, it seems like everything is falling by the wayside and it's starting to affect you, okay? Now, don't rehash old memories, okay? Leave it lie, leave it die, right? Now, it does talk about old injuries. It does talk about learning to control negative thoughts and attempts that you're doing or that you're involved in to improve a relationship. And don't get involved in other people's issues, okay? You have enough of your own. But don't allow someone to stick their nose in your business either. And do not listen to gossip. Gossip is a fearmonger and it causes so many problems. Now, there might be someone in your life who's choosing sides and they're pressuring you to choose sides with them. They want you to be on their side. They want you to believe what it is that they believe, okay? Now, just talk about someone who wants to stay in a bad situation or a bad relationship, and they're fighting the fact that there are other things out there. They want to stay where they feel a semblance of being used to something, being in a relationship that is, a fake sense of security. Now, they're blind to the positions and situations that are available to them. They're wanting to stay where they feel it's familiar to them, okay? So be aware of this. Now, this is the overall energy card. So is this something that you're dealing with, Pisces, where you're scared of what's out there? You're scared to leave a scenario, a relationship, a circumstance, a living environment. You don't know what's waiting for you on the other side, and so you're fearful of it. You're fearful of leaving a circumstance, a situation, an environment, or a relationship because you have a fear of the unknown. Okay, so that's the energy that you're dealing with. So even if you got offered a job in the first week of September, okay, a job that you would like to have and maybe at a distance out of a bad situation that you're in, you're going to be fearful of taking that. And that's what the energy is pointing to, that you're going to be fearful of moving out of a circumstance. Okay, so be aware of that and know that that fear is fake. It's hiding behind your need for new adventure, new things in your life, okay? So be aware of that. Okay, we're going to move into the first week. First couple of days of that first week, you have the Judgment card, and it is reversed. You got a lot of things taking place where you're not trusting your intuition. You're not trusting the things that you know would be good for you. You're not trusting it because of that fear, as I said, of the unknown, okay? Now, with the Judgment reversed, it talks about intuition, it talks about anticipation. And, something's coming to the light of day. You're finding out about something. And there is going to be resistance on your part to a change in your personal status. Now, maybe your partner, your romantic partner is, maybe they're vying to go off on a new relationship with someone else, or maybe they don't want to be part of the relationship dynamic with you anymore. And you're finding out about that, okay? Now, people are going to be judging you, but who cares? People judge us all the time, right? People are going to judge you. Now, it does talk about someone in your circle of energy is going to be caught stealing or being untruthful. And it does talk about delays in legalities. I mean, maybe you're going to find out the truth about someone in your life. Maybe they lied to you, okay? Now, you may be losing interest in activities, losing interest in things that you're involved in because you're dealing with emotional anxiety or psychological anxiety at this time, okay? Now, just talk about psychological recovery. It's going to take a little bit longer. So maybe you have a history of bad relationships or a history of, employment issues where maybe you've lost employment in the past, or you didn't like what you were doing, or you signed up for the wrong course of study, okay? So it does talk about the fact that you are healing, but you're healing very slowly and you're healing from the inside, okay? Your healing is not a physical aspect, it's more a mental aspect where you don't trust your abilities. You don't trust the things that you have put into action in your life. You don't trust your abilities to succeed. Okay, so we're going to move into the middle part of that first week, and you have the Five of Pentacles, and the Five of Pentacles is reversed. Once again, so that whole first week, what I see is that you're dealing with fears, emotional, psychological, okay? So the Five of Pentacles reverse talks about fears and challenges when a secure situation is subject to change. Now, I told you, there might be a relationship in your life that is breaking apart, where one partner is wanting to leave that scenario, okay? And it does talk about financial worries. Now, if you were in a relationship, a partnership, or even a job dynamic, a business partnership, and one partner leaves, yeah, it's going to put strain on you financially. And so that's what you might be dealing with. But it could also talk about you leaving a partnership, and maybe not of your own accord. Maybe you're going to lose your job. Maybe there's going to be a wave of layoffs, and this is going to create strain on your health. So not only are you dealing with psychological issues about, the fear of maybe being jobless or the fear of your relationship breaking up, now you're worried about finances. And it's going to take a strain on your health. So it does talk about home life that's going to be unsettled or maybe not stabilized. Maybe you're scared you don't have enough money to pay the rent and you don't have enough money to be able to exit that situation. Maybe you have a fear of losing the things that you have because of not being able to pay a stable home environment, okay? It also talks about unusual living circumstances. So maybe you've lost your job, you've lost your relationship, your partnership, your marriage, your job, whatever it may be, and it's creating a stress, financial stress on you. So maybe you're having to accommodate a new way of living with your parents, or couch surfing, or maybe you're even having family members come live with you because they've lost their job, okay? So it does talk about relationships in your life are going to be motivated by emotional and psychological neediness, okay? It does talk about your safety and security being at risk. Circumstances are going to make people not respect authority. I mean, there might be a big wave of layoffs. There might be some economic downturns where, financially everybody's feeling the pinch. And so people are stealing and lying and trying to find a way forward. And so it's creating a lot of unrest. Now, it does say that losing status, okay, and almost like a status in society, right? Like people look down on people who don't have work. People look down on people who have to utilize the food banks and things like that. And so, having those, losing any type of status is going to make you feel less than thou. And so you have to be aware of that and know that everybody's going to be going through these issues. It happens to all of us at one point or another in our life. So be aware of that and know that these times shall pass too. So you're going into the last 2 days of that first week, and you have the Queen of Swords straight up. Now, the Queen of Swords is not a very caring person, okay? It's someone who's very analytical, someone who only cares about the truth, the facts, okay? But this is an individual who is an air sign person. That could be Gemini, Cancer, or Gemini, Cancer, Libra. So I'm going to have to look that up. But this is an air sign, okay? And it's someone who has a very analytical mind, very intellectual, loves challenges, very independent, self-assured, okay? And they try to make fair decisions that are good for all, but they don't appreciate emotion And Pisces, what are you dealing with? You're dealing with emotional problems and psychological problems this month, more emotional. Okay. And this Queen of Swords steps in and they don't care about your emotions. They don't give a flying toot about your emotions. They only care about the facts. So they appear as if they're cold and uncaring. This could be a legality. It could be a lawyer, an attorney, a judge, an engineer, a programmer, a journalist, a teacher, even a spokesman for an organization. I mean, it did talk about you losing your job and maybe you're not able to accommodate the price of the rent. And this might be someone that's contacting you and saying, listen, we don't care if you're out of work. We want our rent. Okay. And so you might have to deal with legalities like that. It could also stand for a doctor, a scientist, a neurologist, a sociologist, a criminologist. Okay. Now, it could also be someone who is dealing with developmental or educational needs or problems, okay? So there's someone who is in your circle of energy who is saying, I don't care what the emotions are about. It needs to be fixed. Now, this might be a child of yours, maybe was taking a course of study, an air sign child, and they were taking a course of study and they don't understand it. They don't understand the lessons and they're not able to accommodate completing those lessons on time. And this might be a teacher that steps in and says, listen, we don't care. We don't care if you're frustrated. If you don't get the grades or if you don't get the course or if you don't get the lessons done, you're not going to pass. You're not going to graduate. So these are the things that you are dealing with in that first week. So it does talk about, someone's being a little cold and uncaring, and psychologically it's starting to affect you. It's starting to make you feel less than down and break down your confidence. We're in that second week. And in that second week, there is an earth sign individual, Virgo, Capricorn, or a Taurus. And it might be a child, but it is a female energy. And it's someone who is taking an apprenticeship program, someone who's involved in detail work. So they're doing some type of career training, and it is going to bring them employment. Now, it does talk about the fact that you have a professional attitude that is going to benefit you, Pisces. Okay? You are going to be moving into management of some sort. You're going to double your wealth, possibly through a partnership, maybe a business partnership, maybe a new endeavor, a new job circumstance, okay? A new job offer. It could even be romantically. Or even a work partnership where you're joining forces with someone. It could even be the fact that you are joining forces with family members or friends or mentors, okay? It also talks about getting involved in an organized program of diet, exercise, maybe joining a gym, health conscious, okay? Being involved in health maintenance activities. Now, it does talk about you having to take care of something special. You may inherit or be gifted with property, a gift of sort that is something that would be generational, okay? Now, it does say that you're going to double your wealth, but there's someone that you're dealing with that is very set in their ways and they don't want to shake the bag. They want things to operate in a very stable, straightforward way. And so you're going to be dealing with this individual. And it does say that that is an earth sign individual. Okay, so we're moving into the middle 2 days of the second week. 10 of Cups reversed. So, oh, Pisces, you're going to have to open up a little bit. Stop being so strict and so kind of like, not wanting to change your modality of anything, okay? Open up to this wider view of your life, okay? Somehow you're being closed off to different views, different lives, different attitudes, and you're kind of stuck in your ways. You don't want to change. So it does talk about private family sorrows. Maybe someone has passed. Maybe someone's dealing with health issues that are chronic, okay? Or maybe even, crossing to the next realm. Now, it does talk about dysfunction in some area in your family life. People around you, they're kind, but they're not really a spiritual match for you. You need to open up your heart, okay? Because there's someone around you that's struggling with their health or maybe even recouping from an illness. And you might be a little bit stark with them, kind of like blaming them for their own issues and saying, well, maybe this person's dealing with cancer some type of chronic illness, maybe, and you're saying, well, if you wouldn't have done this, right, you wouldn't be dealing with that. So that's the wrong way to approach anyone who's dealing with an illness, especially if they're recouping from an illness. Now, this might be you. You might be recouping from an illness, and this might be the fact that you're kind of saying to yourself, well, you did this to yourself. So what? So what, Pisces, if you did this to yourself? You need to focus on fixing it. Never mind placating and blaming and, taking the blame or giving the blame. Fix it. It's not about who's to blame. It's about, can you fix it? Put the effort in. Now, it does talk about negative behavior patterns that you might be exhibiting, okay? And they need to end. You need to stop it. You need to stop that and learn new coping skills. I mean, I can give you an example. Let's say you were the type of person that when you felt angry, you would, go to the cupboard to make yourself a sandwich and it would cool you down. Or maybe you're the type of person that smoked. Or maybe you did illicit drugs. Every time you got upset, you would do something to bring your mind back into balance because your mind was so overactive. Okay, well, Pisces, be aware that that is part of the problem. So change those negative behavior patterns one at a time if you can. If you can't, find the resources that you need in order to help you. Okay, so we are now in the last couple of days of that second week. You have the Ace of Swords and it's reversed. Now, you are wanting things to be stable and quiet and calm and no stress, okay? So you're avoiding confrontation and you're putting up with certain behaviors that you shouldn't. So you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling tension. You might even be making some enemies, and that could be in your family, your friends, your work, okay? People are brooding over something that they think you said about them or did to them, and they took offense to it, okay? Now, there's an emotion that's being restrained. It could be anger. It could even be, a sexual attraction of sorts. Okay, maybe you're attracted to somebody, and that person is a bit of a jerk. Yeah, or maybe you're feeling anger at someone for something that they said to you or did to you, or a perceived wrong that you have toward them, or vice versa. Okay, but it does talk about restraining that anger or that emotion in order to move things forward in a positive way. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Sometimes we got to swallow our pride in order to move forward in a relationship. And be aware that everybody has their side to the story. So perhaps sitting down with that individual across from each other and speaking calmly, plainly, and saying, this is what hurt me and this is why it hurt me. And doing it on both sides of that table. Okay, so we are now in the third week. And in that third week, the first card you have in the first couple of days is the Two of Cups reversed. And thank goodness this card showed up because it talks about a reconciliation, okay? So maybe you and this individual did what I said. You sat down, you worked it out, okay? And maybe you're reconciling on a project or even a relationship that you had from the past, as I said, where there were frustrations on both sides and there was blaming on both sides, finger pointing, okay? Now it does say, put yourself in someone else's shoes. Look at their perspective for a change, okay? Now, two people, yourself and someone else. Maybe you express your emotions and they don't, or maybe vice versa. Maybe they express their emotions by anger, striking out at people, and you're more the type of person that kind of gets secluded. You kind of like go into yourself, okay? So there's a difference, and there is difference in all personalities. So be aware of that and be prepared to be, respectful of the other people's choices in life, and they need to be reciprocal to you also. Now, it does say that your attitude towards something is going to affect you differently than it is going to affect that person. And that could be in a romantic partnership. That could be in a job situation. Could even be a familial circumstance, okay? And you might be kind of Pisces, you might be like saying, I'm not compromising. I'm sticking to it, right? Well, be aware if you're not willing to compromise in a relationship, in a circumstance, even in a job, if you're not willing to compromise and to put your 50 cents in, but be willing to accommodate someone else's needs and even personality traits in a job scenario, okay? So be aware of that. Now, You don't want to compromise, that's fine, but know that it's not gonna turn out very well if no one's willing to compromise and everybody's throwing their hands up in the air and saying, well, we give up, right? So you might feel a little restless as you're moving into that third week, okay? Because the dynamics in relationships and not agreeing with people that you're working with or living with or in a relationship with, I mean, that's going to take a strain on your life, your health, and your relationship. We're in the middle 2 days of that third week, and you have the Empress reversed. Okay, well, that's a maternal figure. So you might be dealing with a maternal figure where you don't agree with something that they're doing, and that's what's creating the problems. Okay, talks about a lack of understanding, even a lack of commitment, where someone is not committed to something perhaps as wholeheartedly as you are, or perhaps you're not committed to a relationship, a circumstance, a job, a living scenario as they are. Maybe you were just in it for a short period of time and you thought, okay, this is good for now, but I want to move on. And this person is wanting a little bit more stability. Okay. Now, maybe this maternal figure is feeling some loneliness or feeling displaced or feeling like they don't have security. And, maybe they even feel like you're not really understanding how they feel. Could also be you. It could be vice versa. It could be you feeling all these things. Okay. And maybe you lost your job. And of course, it said you did want to vie for something else. And so you left one job to move into a new scenario, a new job opportunity. Okay. And so you're still kind of dwelling on the past. And you're dwelling on partnerships and relationships and jobs and circumstances from the past. And you're kind of looking in the mirror and you're saying, what have you achieved? Well, Pisces, you achieved a hell of a lot. Even to get to the point where you're looking in that mirror and saying, what did you achieve? Well, it's quite obvious you achieved a lot because you had a job to leave. You had a life. You had things that happened. We learn from our mistakes. Even if you were in a job that you hated, okay? You learned from it. And you take those lessons into the future, into the new opportunities. This last part of this is a little bit kind of freaky because um, I am an earth sign and I have a child that's a water sign. And it does say a bad relationship with a mother, a sister, an aunt, a grandmother, a daughter, a niece. Okay, it's a female energy. So there is going to be tensions in relationships with the female aspect in your life. Okay, whether it's a mother, a daughter, a sister, a niece, even a mentor that's a female. Female relationships in your life are going to be very stressful for you. So be aware of that and be prepared to, look at all sides of the coin instead of just focusing strictly on your own and saying, I'm right and you're wrong. Simple as that. Well, of course, that's going to create some havoc. Okay. So now we're at the last 2 days of that third week. Money problems. And that could be what you're dealing with. You could be dealing with money problems with a female in your life, whether it's a child, a mother, a sister. I mean, maybe you need money, or maybe you owe them money, or maybe you're asking for money, or they owe you money. Okay. So there's going to be a dynamic in a relationship with a female where you're fighting over money at this point in time. And it does talk about worries about security. Now, circumstances have, they've kind of been lackadaisical. They've been back and forth. They've been on that roller coaster ride. And maybe that stopped you, or maybe even stopped someone else that you care about from developing into their best potential. Now, I have seen this in a few of the readings, especially for the earth signs, where a pregnancy, a loss of a home or a job or a relationship, okay, is going to stop them from doing something that they want to do. Now, if you were a young person and you found out you were pregnant, I mean, this could even be you. Maybe you were planning on traveling or planning on going to school or planning on buying a home. And then all of a sudden, whether you're male or female or other, you find that you're going to be a parent. And that changes the financial aspect in your life. And so it changes the dynamic. Okay. And so you feel like you weren't able to develop into who you wanted to be because of this one little aspect. Well, know that You can still become pregnant, have a child, and have a career and be fulfilled in your life, right? There are many women and men that do this. That, I mean, there are men and women and other who are self-sustaining individuals who are raising children, well-adjusted children. So be aware of that. Now, it does say that you're going to receive a phone call, okay, from an earth sign individual. Phone call, a message, a text message, okay, from an earth sign person, which is a Virgo, Capricorn, or Taurus. And it talks about a delayed trip. It talks about the fact that maybe they were planning on going a trip and now they can't because they're having to deal with reproductive issues, okay? So, so it talks about a delayed situation, maybe even a delayed communication where they were wanting to call you and they got stuck in traffic, or they got stuck at the mall, or they got, their phone's not working. So there is going to be a delay in communication. So maybe this individual was planning on visiting you, or you were planning on visiting them, and they ended up with a doctor's appointment and you showed up at their house and they weren't there. Okay? So these are things that you have to accommodate for. You might get a phone call from someone, a nurse sign, maybe even a nurse sign child that says, maybe a daughter of yours, says, "Oh, I missed the bus. I missed the bus, mom or dad." Okay? I missed the bus. I missed the plane. I missed the phone call. Or maybe they're telling you, "I have to cancel my trip. I have health issues, or I have reproductive issues, or, my spouse found out that we're going to be first-time parents," right? Those type of things. Now, they're going to tell you about obstacles that they're dealing with, okay? Might even be delays in paperwork. So here's the big thing. In the end part of the third week, in the last couple of days of the third week, you're going to be dealing with financial woes brought about by health issues that perhaps a nurse sign child or a sibling is dealing with, or maybe even a child of yours, okay? But it could simply be a child that you care about, and they're dealing with health issues with their reproductive organs. So be aware of that. But there is going to be a lot of delays. And Pisces, I'm telling you straight, if you have any health issues, go and get them checked now, because it talks about paying attention to your health because something is in the early stage of development. Yeah. So be aware of that. And if there is something that you can accommodate into your life, into a change, it does talk about diet. It talks about diet. It talks about psychological pressure and you not being able to deal with stress. Perhaps Pisces, you're the type of person when you, like I said, when you're angry or you're sad or you're depressed, okay, you turn to food. And maybe you're turning to the wrong food. Or maybe when you're in those states of mind, you turn to drugs or alcohol or illicit drugs, okay? So be aware what the reason is behind it, and it will help you kick that habit. But it does talk about research and finding out the ins and outs of an illness, perhaps even turning to holistics if you have to find a solution to a dilemma that you're dealing with your health. But it all revolves around stress. Okay, so we are now in the last week of September, first couple of days of the last week. You have the Two of Swords and it's straight up. That's tension. Like all of September seems to be revolving around stress and tension, not being able to make decisions, financial woes, okay? And once again, in that last week, now remember, with the rain comes the sun, right? So the first couple of days of that last week, you're going to be dealing with tension. Yeah. And you're trying to be impartial and trying to make a decision that you have to make, and you're being very tolerant of other people at this point in time. So a solution will bring about relief, and you know that, right? So choosing between two things, two people, two situations, two jobs, two places of living, two ways of living, two relationships. You have to make a choice. Who says you have to make a choice, Pisces? Why do you have to make a choice? Seriously. Why do you have to make a choice? I can understand two jobs. Yeah, you're going to have to choose a job, but choosing two people, between two people, why? Why? Just choose yourself. Okay. Now it talks about laws, it talks about rules of order, red tape, and even bureaucratic complications are not going to be part of the problem. They're going to be part of the solution. So know that as you're moving out of that last week, that things are going to get better. And as I see in the middle 2 days of that last week, you have the Six of Cups. Thank God, because that talks about relaxation, prosperity, success following insecurity. Okay, it talks about your self-esteem, being more confident, making the effort in your relationships in your life with your children, your parents, your friends, your mentors, your co-workers, even your pets. So you're gaining confidence, which is a positive, okay? And you're making that effort. Now, past memories, you're going to be remembering someone from the past and you're going to have fond memories of them, okay? You remember the time spent with that individual and their personality and the things they did, the things they believed, the things that, they got involved in. And maybe they were kind of like off the wall and they were the type of person that, they were a little different than other people. They dressed different. They believed differently. They didn't play into societal pressures, right? They were just themselves and they were happy being themselves. And so maybe you bid adieu to this person, but you're remembering them from the past and you're wishing them well on their journey in the next life, okay? Now, what I'm seeing here is not a bad thing. It does talk about returning to the past, someplace from your childhood, okay? It talks about rekindling of past loves, past friendships. Now, there are some issues surrounding your childhood. Yeah. And you might be receiving gifts from the past, from someone that was in your life in the past. And you're even wishing that the past would come back, that you could turn the clock back. And Pisces, we all wish that. We all wish that we could change things that we got involved in, that we deemed as negative, okay? We all wish that, but you can't. You learn from those lessons and you move into the future. So it does talk about going on vacation. You need a break. There's been a lot of stress in September. Take that damn break. Pack that suitcase, take that break, and have a vacation. It does talk about visiting someplace from the past, from your childhood, okay? So pack that bag and get on that plane or that bus or that train and off you go. You're going to be revisiting old friendships and old areas where you lived or frequented as a child. So we are now in the last 2 days of that last week. You have the Ten of Swords, and the Ten of Swords is reversed. So, oh, geez, I almost don't want to read it to you. This talks about family inherited problems, okay? So maybe you're going to go somewhere to, fond memories of the past. Maybe someone you cared about from the past has passed, and you have kind of like frequented the area where that individual lived, or maybe where you lived as a child. And maybe there's people there that you didn't really hit it off with, or maybe they took a grudge against you, okay? And so there might be some issues that you're going to deal with, and it's kind of like a psychological burden where you don't want to deal with it. You just want to remember the positive from the past, okay? But it does talk about family inherited problems, whether that be extended family or whether it be nuclear family. It is family inherited problems. Now, it could simply be that you don't get along with your in-laws, or you didn't get along with your your partner's family, okay? Something like that. But it is family inherited conflict. And it's this cyclic pattern of conflict. It's like, it's something that has gone from generation to generation to generation. I mean, maybe you're fighting with your cousins. Maybe you're fighting with your uncles, your aunts, extended family. Okay? And you don't agree with something that they have done or that they have said, or maybe you felt begrudged by them. Okay? So be aware of that. Now, Stress is the biggest creator of illness. Be aware of that. And if you can, do meditation, get involved in yoga, do long walks in nature, okay, that type of stuff. Your health is under control. You know what you're doing. You know how to fix this. Your health's under control, but it still needs attention. There is more that you can do. So if you have to, research the hell out of it. But it does talk about an addiction. So Pisces, if you have an addiction, whether that's to drugs or alcohol or food or gaming or even a self-defeating attitude, I mean, hopelessness, like something that is holding you in this rut, you got to let go of it and know that this life is meant to be enjoyed and it's meant to be lived, not sitting behind the door waiting for someone to find you. Okay, get out there and live your life and laugh and smile and smell the roses and watch the birds and feel the rain. Okay, and watch the colors change in the fall. You need to break these patterns. My final word on it. This is the final word for you Pisces in the month of September. It has to end. You have to break those patterns that are hurting you. Doesn't matter whether it's diet, health, a self-defeating attitude, a lack of confidence, or even allowing other people to influence you negatively. Don't join the flock. Be yourself. Be you, okay? Don't join that flock of geese or that, I forget how they say it, the flock of goats or whatever. Don't be a follower. Be a leader. Adopt better actions in your life. Just because someone else is able to smoke cigarettes and, it doesn't bother them and they seem like they don't have health problems, don't think that in the future they're not going to have health problems, okay? Don't follow their lead. They light a cigarette, you light a cigarette. They have a pint of brew, maybe you're going to have a pint of brew, okay? They go out and they eat, and they don't gain weight. Maybe you do, right? Just remember, you are you and they are they, okay? Take care of you, Pisces, in the month of September. Focus on your health. And if you need to focus on your diet, get off that damn bandwagon and focus on your health. I shall see you in October 2026. Namaste, my friends. Bye-bye.